The crown jewel of the discrimination against women in ISKCON is the refusal of the GBC to allow them to initiate disciples. This is the top position of spiritual leadership in our society. And there's no question that the fact that there are 80 men and no women initiating makes people turned off to this organization.
If we were to ask any senior leaders of ISKCON or preachers as to what is the reason that people are turned off from this movement, I think the last reason anyone will give is because of lack of Vaishnavi Diksha gurus. This is not the main reason. There's so many reasons that people are turned off from this movement. For example, having to wear tilak, having to become a vegetarian, having to follow 4 regulative principles and take up a regulated life and make commitment. There's so many reasons that people are turned off.
Well, actually, the fastest growing religions in the Western world, so we're told, are those that are very conservative always in terms of gender roles, traditional gender roles. These are the ones that are growing. So how can we say that if we take the reverse role, that will engender a massive increase in our movement? In fact, arguably, the most successful preaching projects in the Western world, attracting Western devotees, are in Hungary, where the GBC Shivaram Swami is establishing Varnashram communities, as Prabhupada wanted, with traditional gender roles promoted, and he is personally very strongly against this idea of introducing, at the present time in our society, the idea of female Diksha gurus.
So we've had over 200 young people taking part in Krishna consciousness. They like the chanting, they get involved. They tend to shy away from being involved with the organization on a long-term basis because of regressive attitudes like this from the leadership.
Here, the GBC is being criticized for simply following the standards established by Srila Prabhupada himself. It's quite surprising that this video was published on dandavats.com, which is a website sponsored by the GBC, meant for spreading the teachings of Srila Prabhupada.
In spite of so-called regressive attitudes like this, thousands of bright and intelligent people have joined and are joining the Hare Krishna movement, including Kalakant Prabhu and his good wife.
The fact that women in ISKCON are not entitled to give Diksha has been a real personal struggle for me. I find that it's something that I don't tell people outside of the ISKCON community because I'm, to be honest, worried and embarrassed by how they might react and how they might see that as a reflection of my own views and my own ideas about women.
We cannot be wholly insensitive to public opinion, but Srila Prabhupada warned us not to change ourselves to suit the public, but rather to change the public to accommodate us.
That is the defect of Western civilization, vox populi, taking opinion of the public. But what is the value of this public? Drunkards, smokers, meat eaters, woman hunters. So what is the use of such third class, fourth class men's opinion? We do not advocate such opinion. What Krishna says, that is standard, that's all. Krishna is the supreme and his version is final. No opinion, no democracy.
The marvelous thing about Prabhupada was that he was so even-handed in the way that he treated his fledgling disciples. He had no real sense of gender roles for people.
Although Srila Prabhupada was equally encouraging both men and women in devotional service, he was also very much aware of the distinction between the genders and spoke about it repeatedly.
First people he taught to cook were male disciples, not female disciples. He didn't think that cooking was women's work. He thought, since he cooked for himself, he didn't have any gender concern about that.
Yet another scholar who was familiar with Srila Prabhupada and wrote a book titled Hare Krishna and the Counterculture has quite a different opinion. The position of women in the society may not appeal to Americans interested in women's liberation. Swami Bhaktivedanta says that all women other than one's wife are to be considered as one's mother, and yet he regards them as prone to degradation, of little intelligence and untrustworthy. They should not be given as much freedom as men, but should be treated like children. They should be protected all during their lives by their fathers when young, later by their husbands, and in their old age by their sons. This view is largely consonant with the traditional one found in the ancient Indian law books. Females may not become presidents of any temple, nor occupy positions of authority. They may do the cooking, help with the devotional services and maintenance of the temple, and prepare the flower offerings for Krishna.
And Dr. Judah has written a very nice book. I've read it. Did you like that book? Oh, yeah.
I remember one evening he was looking into each of our eyes, looking at each and every one of us, saying, I want each one of you to open a temple somewhere. And at that time, I was so young and so impetuous, and I was only 16 years old, and I just said, even the girls? Swamiji? That's what I said. And Prabhupada looked at me, and he looked very intently, and he said, there is no difference between the boys and the girls. When you are teaching Krishna consciousness, there is no difference.
Although Srila Prabhupada engaged his women disciples in preaching, he gradually introduced traditional gender roles and didn't encourage them to become independent traveling preachers.
A 16 years old boy can travel all over the world, and it is very difficult for a 16 years old girl to travel all over the world.
Just like our women, Krishna conscious, they are working, they don't want equal rights of women. It is due to Krishna conscious. They are cleansing the temple, they are cooking, they are very nicely, they are satisfied. They never said that I have to go to Japan for preaching, like Prabhupada. They never said. This is artificial. So, Krishna consciousness means one in his constitutional position.
Here we have Prabhupada, who comes to the West, who grew up in a culture where there is gender disparity.
This gender disparity should not be misunderstood as a product of some backward Indian culture. Rather, these are the principles of Vedic culture. Srila Prabhupada used these terms, Indian, Vedic, interchangeably. So his teaching is based on Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. They are not conditioned by his mundane upbringing. Moreover, we accept him as a pure devotee by birth.
And he actually gives a privileged position to women in comparison to what they were used to in India, right? So I would think that he prioritized the more universal principles of bhakti, right? That everybody is a spark of the divine, everybody is divine in themselves, everybody has the potential to practice bhakti, rather than some of the more ritual aspects which are more important in India.
Throughout his teachings, Srila Prabhupada repeatedly emphasized the importance of gender roles in Krishna consciousness.
if you think about the thousands and thousands of words that Prabhupada spoke, and you think about the spirituality he was inviting people to join, it was fully inclusive of women, being able on their own right to pursue that spiritual journey, not under the aegis of their husband or of some male.
There is no doubt that Srila Prabhupada encouraged both men and women equally in Krishna consciousness. But from other side, you can't ignore all the references from Srila Prabhupada's books, conversations, letters, where he clearly recommends to his female disciples to practice bhakti under the aegis of their husbands.
In terms of the history of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, there have been very prominent female gurus. And not only was it an accepted tradition to have female gurus, but there was also no evidence that it was ever a controversial point.
The practice of Vaishnava Diksha Guru, in the history, it was not an issue because it was hardly there. In all the sampradayas, hardly you find any female name. And in the entire Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, there were only 3 prominent cases of female Diksha Gurus. And these were liberated souls. Janava Mata, the wife of Lord Nityananda, Hemalata Thakurani, the daughter of Srinivas Acharya, and Ganga Mata Goswami. So these were exceptions. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada says it is very rare.
First of all, Janava, did she give Upanayana Sanskar? The answer is no. And in the ISKCON lines, where they quote, the proponents of female Diksha Guru quote many names, or they cite many names, excuse me. Those ISKCON women did not wear the Brahmin threads. This system of Brahminical initiation, which is anyway Vedic Diksha, has been in India part of Brahminical Vedic culture from time immemorial, was introduced in the Gaudiya Sampradaya for anyone by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he did not give the sacred thread to a woman, neither did Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. What is happening is that in the West, where liberal, leftist, egalitarian ethos is so very popular, there is a push for a token woman guru, which is none other than affirmative action.
For example, disciples of these female gurus were very proud to declare themselves the disciples in the texts or the poems or the songs they wrote. And there's no issue that, there's no text anywhere that shows that people were saying, for example, that Lord Chaitanya didn't appoint any female gurus, so therefore we shouldn't have female gurus in our movement. This is not at all an issue.
Prabhupada, clearly in the purport of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, verse number 7, describes that we are following Vedic culture. Someone wrote to me, we are not following Vedic culture, we're propagating Harinam. Then they're not reading what Prabhupada wrote. They're not reading what he wrote. Read it. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, chapter 32, text number 12 purport, Prabhupada talks about Dhruva Maharaj taking his mother with him to Vaikuntha in an airplane. And there he says that she could not be his Diksha Guru because she was his mother and because she was a woman.
Women within our movement not being able to be gurus is a bit disturbing, because I've always read in Prabhupada's books, and what we've heard is that it's really about the qualification for someone to become a guru, and that one's material body shouldn't be taken into account when wondering if someone should be able to initiate disciples and connect people in our parampara and connect people back to their relationship with Krishna.
If we study other sampradayas, Vedic,
traditional sampradayas, we'll find that this female Diksha Guru practice is not there. So it is not that only in ISKCON females are not entitled to be a Diksha Gurus. It is for thousands of years in practice in India that male will take that service. So that argument that bodily consideration should not be taken into account. But Madhvacharya took it into account, Ramanujacharya took it into account, Nimbarkacharya took it into account, Vishnu Swami took it into account. In their sampradayas there were many great Vaishnavis and ladies, but they were not Diksha Gurus. So we cannot dismiss the tradition, the culture, the acharyas. Rather, we should follow them. We should learn from them.
Prabhupada spent the last years of his life and most of his money building huge centers in India so that people could come from all over the world to learn what is Vedic culture in India. This is the place to come and learn Vedic culture, not sitting in the United States and having a degree from a modern university and telling the world based on that what Vedic culture is. But because in the West, the egalitarian equal rights mentality is all pervading, and these liberal-minded devotees cannot withstand that temptation. Therefore, they're agitating. They have not lived in India. They have not understood what is Vedic culture.
In the early 70s, there was a small group of us traveling with Srila Prabhupada throughout South India. And when we came to Madras, the Smarta Brahmins in Madras came to Srila Prabhupada and spoke very strongly, saying that he should not make Malechas into Brahmins. In other words, Prabhupada came to the West. He picked up these young people who came from terrible backgrounds, and Prabhupada was now making them into Brahmins. And these Smartas said that no, this is not correct. And using the scriptures, Prabhupada very vehemently defeated them, saying again, it's according to quality and work that one is designated as a Brahmin, not due to birth. So it's very ironic that now those same individuals that Prabhupada stood up for, that yes, you are Brahmins, despite your birth as Malechas, because of your quality and your work, you should be recognized as Brahmins. Those very people are now turning around and saying to Prabhupada's women disciples, Prabhupada's women followers, that no, because of your birth as a woman, therefore you're not qualified, you can't do this, you can't do that. So this is not Prabhupada's message. That's not Krishna's message.
Read what Prabhupada wrote in his letter. He never appointed a woman a temple president or a GBC. He clearly commented about Indira Gandhi, that in the Mahabharata, a woman was never the controller. There were no queens ruling in India. It is our own godbrother is saying it's sexist. That means his guru was sexist. That means he's not a follower of his guru. That's what it means. Because that fellow whole concept is based on Western concepts, not on the Vedic concepts. And so this is the problem. And the Vedic concepts, all the sampradayas, Vaishnav, Smarta, they all acharyas, and the whole Vedic parampara, the kings, Vangsha and Vangshanucharita, what is described in the Puranas. You don't find a woman ruling the country. You don't find a woman Diksha Guru. And the Varnashram system, which is why Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur introduced the Brahmin thread, was to revive Varnashram. And he gave the Brahmin thread to non-Brahmins by birth, because he didn't accept it was Brahmin by birth. But he didn't give it to women, because Sri Dharma is different. Somebody said, Prabhupada never talked about Sri Dharma. Why did Prabhupada publish the Bhagavatam first canto, where it's mentioned in the verse, first canto, 9th chapter, text number 27 or 21, Sri Dharma, clearly in the shloka, in the Bhagavatam. So women have their own duties. They should follow those duties, household duties, housewife, Draupadi was also a housewife. She did not rule. Kunti was the mother of Pandavas. She did not rule. Gandhari was the mother of Duryodhana and his 100 brothers. She did not rule. Her husband was blind. She put on a blindfold to follow the husband. These are the Vedic women, not the women we must have a guru to show that we're equal with men. That's what's going on.
Simply by lifting the moratorium against women, the GBC can make tremendous strides towards spreading this movement again amongst Westerners, the way it was done in the very early days of ISKCON.
This so-called moratorium is not something made by GBC. It is there from Srila Prabhupada's time. He himself set the standard by not appointing his female disciples on the posts of temple presidents, GBCs, initiating gurus. Why he did not do that? Few times he spoke about it, but he never did it. Why? Because it is not Vedic culture. And this is why he came to establish Varnashrama system, Vedic civilization. In so many purports, so many places, conversations, letters, Prabhupada condemns modern civilization. Why? Because it's encouraging unrestricted minglings of males and females, which is the main obstacle in spiritual path, because of sexual attraction. To overcome sexual attraction, there are very strict rules of gender roles to be followed in society. And you can see Srila Prabhupada spoke much more about gender rules than about female becomes gurus. So this is what we should preach to the society. We should change society and not be influenced by the modern society, which is completely opposite.
Is it possible, Swamiji, for a woman to be a guru in the line of disciplic succession?
Yeah. If she is able to go to the highest perfection of life, why it is not possible to become guru? Jannava Devi was Nityananda's wife. She became. But not so many. Man or woman, unless one has attained the perfection, Jai Krishna Tattvavita Sai Guru. The qualification of Guru is that he must be fully cognizant of the science of Krishna. Then he or she can become Guru. Is it any prohibition that a woman cannot become professor? If she is qualified, she can become professor. What is wrong? She must be qualified. That is the condition. Similarly, if the woman understands Krishna consciousness perfectly, she can become Guru.
So on principle, we're not against that women or spirit souls in female bodies can initiate. There are examples in our Sampradaya, but as Srila Prabhupada said, not many. It was there in our Sampradaya at a time when the society was going on more or less according to Varnashram principles, which Prabhupada told us to establish. He spoke about establishing Varnashram again and again and again, and hardly, I believe, 2 or 3 times when he was asked about it, he said that women can become gurus. So why are we stressing this thing which Prabhupada didn't stress, and forgetting this Varnashram, farm communities, which Prabhupada did stress? Prabhupada said that if we establish these farms, millions will join our movement. So if we really want millions to join our movement, then we should stress on this instead of trying to make some adjustment, which is why then, if it is allowed, why then are so many leaders against it, leaders and followers against it? Is it that we're all just bigoted? No, because from our perspective, this is being introduced to be in the line of the modern demoniac society, gender parity, men and women all the same, which militates against establishing the Varnashram roles which Prabhupada spoke about, wrote about, again and again and again and again. Please go back and read Srila Prabhupada's books and see what he says about all these things.